Okay, welcome back everyone. We're entering the second part of the program. I don't know about you, but I thought the first speakers really set the scene for what we mean by a commons when we talk about it, and also what we can do with it. And I must tell you frankly that it feels great to hear these people talk. It's the stuff that you try to do in your daily lives in the office. I think all of you are part of this. But hearing from these people that we're part of this mind-baffling big idea where we can connect society through culture, where 20 million objects are being made available through Europeana and through all of you, where there are 100 billion euros in investment flying around from the European Commission. And I thought the most interesting one was the 13 trillion man-hours available to us to actually make all this stuff work. So I hope you can take all that back to you tomorrow when you go into the trenches again in your offices. What we'd like to do now in the second part is we'd like to introduce you to some of the cooks, some of the people who actually work and try to establish some of these ideas that have been put on the scene here this morning. So we'll be talking and we'll be hearing from a number of different initiatives. National portals, vertical portals, but also people from the private sector, from Google, from Creative Commons, and we'll run this up by panel discussion, and hopefully we'll know a bit more about how we can make this work, because that's the thing that I like most about what Michael Edson said. It's, the Commons could be a very powerful tool to make things happen, and I think that's the notion I'd like to keep in mind for this next session. We have about an hour and a half to go through 7 presentations, so there will be a challenge. We'll ask all the speakers to keep it brief and get the most important messages out. And then we'll have a panel discussion, and there will be a little bit of room for you to also pose questions to the people here on stage. I'd like to start with Joe Cousins, the Executive Director of Europeana, to tell us about what Europeana does in this context. Joe?
Okay. Actually, you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to tell you very much about Europeana. I think most of us here are in the business of getting content to the user. So we are in the business of getting cultural heritage content to the user. That's what we most of us here do in our daily lives. But we don't know where the user is going to start. It's pretty likely they start at Google. Yeah, most of us start there. Some of them will start at Wikipedia, but some will also start in their school sites, in their university sites, in YouTube, in Facebook, etc., etc. And along the way, they get nicely distracted. So they'll go into Google, they'll do a search on Chopin, they will see some results. One of them will be Wikipedia. They might go into Wikipedia. They might see the one that says Chopin loves nocturnes, which is high up in the results on Google. But they will not necessarily find the content that we have got in our cultural heritage institutions, because it is not out there and it is not open. If it is not out there and it is not open, then they won't find it, and we seriously risk making ourselves irrelevant to the future generations. There was a talk last week at Europeana Tech by Bill Thompson from the BBC archives, and he was saying that we are the generation, it is us, that actually understand the importance, understand how you go and do the research in the libraries, in the museums, know about the books, the manuscripts, the pictures, the films, all of the things that contribute to our cultural knowledge, to our understanding of how society works. And we are the generation that has to put that online, because our kids won't know about it. They won't even care. They haven't found it through Google. It doesn't exist. And I think for me, one of the most important things that we have to do is to make sure that we live the public mission of making sure that the stuff that belongs to the public is accessible by the public. That doesn't mean to say that we destroy the right side of things. So what I want to do is to start this talk with the user. This is a quote actually from Lynn Brinley. Knowledge flows to the future, not who stores the content. So the end user wants access to cultural heritage. At the moment, he's got many ways of finding that cultural heritage. It's through the Googles, the Wikipedias, through national portals, and through the kind of portals which are single domain or cross domain throughout Europe. These are private or community-based, or they are public national enterprises or public European enterprises. And they're not distinct. So if we just take the public side of it, they all mesh into each other. The planets collide, if you like. So what positions are we going to take? How are we going to make that knowledge flow work as far as the user is concerned? How do we get the user from a school site in the Netherlands through to something that's on EU screen or something that's within Europeana? The last, 2007 to 2010, Europeana, as you all know, sucked in content, and it will continue to do so. We're not stopping that. But the model was very much, the business model was based on being able to bring in all the stuff that you are producing, to aggregate it, to make it interoperable, to make it as open as is feasible, in order to give it to the user. And that came from all of our institutions, all of the different portals that we have created across Europe. Now, this year, we have really tried to change that model round and look at the demand side, i.e. what is it that the user wants? How does the user want to get at this information that we are all producing? Can we cater for their individual needs? And in doing that, we started to look at how we might segment the markets, how the different portals that exist could take a different position in that market, that we target the users in different ways. Because it's my absolute belief, and I'm sure it's many of yours, that Europeana cannot be all things to all men. It can be some of the substance behind it, but if you want a front end that appeals to the school child, it's a very different front end to the one that's going to appeal to the serious researcher. So we started to look at how you segment this market. Still, with Europeana in the background, using the API, but it can also be stuff that comes in from Wikipedia, stuff that comes in from specialist bibliographic databases, etc., depending on what it is you are trying to give to your end user. Europeana sits very much in the new site that we launched yesterday. It sits very much in the sphere of the general public. It's trying to be a fairly generalist place to go. But there's quite a few people in that space who are also trying to do the same thing. So the national portals are aiming to be generalist portals for their national public. That is also true for something like ApeNet or Apex as it becomes. It's going to be a site for archives across Europe. Part of its aim is to go for the general public. And then there are all sorts of other areas that we can have a look at, that we can play a role in. In terms of the business model, we think that Europeana can offer added value in terms of enriching the tools and services to be able to distribute that data, to market that data, so that there is a value chain as far as the general public is concerned. That, I think, is largely Europeana's role. However, you could have the same picture for the German Public Library. Sorry, I've missed the, for the German Public, and delivered by the German Digital Library. They are doing the same thing, but they're doing it for a slightly tighter public. Equally, you could have a more specialist research site for researchers that uses the content that isn't in Europeana, that comes from the European Library, that comes from ApeNet. You could create something called Europeana Research, could be called something else, but it's targeted towards the researcher. ApeNet, as I said, could deliver something specifically for the archivist, a professional audience. And then there is also, how do you deliver for the school child? I don't believe it's Europeana creating a site for the school child. It is Europeana giving the content that we've got, so it goes into the recognized mechanisms such as European SchoolNet, and that is where the children, the teachers go and access Europeana's information, all the stuff that comes from all of you. So, what's the main objective of your service? To create access to content across Europe. Who is your target audience? The general public. How do you relate to other services such as the ones from the other panelists? I think we are as much a support service and an aggregator, but we are a distributor. What I would love is that every single site that is represented here takes the API, extracts the stuff from Europeana that is relevant to your audience, doesn't have to be all of it, the part that's relevant, and it becomes part of your site. How do you see these services interrelate in an already crowded information space? I think that's about knowledge flows. I think this is the bit that we need to crack. I don't have the answers. I'm hoping together we do. And what do you consider to be the main challenges to achieve your vision? Target markets in the commons. There's loads of others, but that's the one I'm sticking with today. Next. So.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you, Joan. You really kept very close to the assignment. And within the 10 minutes, that's super. Let's go on straight away with one of the most interesting new initiatives, the German Digital Library. I'd like to introduce Monika Hagendorn-Saupe, who will introduce us to the ambitions of the German Digital Library. Monika.
So, thank you. What I want to introduce you quickly is more or less a development. The German Digital Library is not yet there, it's under development, and the screenshot you can see here is just the project website, telling a little bit about our aims to create the German Digital Library. According to the structure of Germany, it is a complicated situation with responsibility for culture mostly in the 16 Länder and not so much in the federal government, which means that in our case it was not acceptable to have only the federal government being involved in doing the German Digital Library, and according to the thank you. According to the decision which was made, we have 13 partners which have been nominated by the federal government and the 16 states to create the German Digital Library. It's 13 institutions which by a decree are nominated to do this jointly together. We have funding from the federal government to create the service, which is about 8 million euros. And we have funding from the federal government and all the 16 Länder shared by each other for the permanent running of the system. At the moment, the agreement says we will do this for 5 years, and there will be an evaluation after 3 years. The group has been 13 institutions. You can imagine it's difficult to coordinate. So the group has agreed to elect a board which is consists of three partners. The president of the board is Hermann Patzinger. He is the president of the Foundation for Russian Cultural Heritage, where I come from. And the other two in the board are the Director General of the Bavarian State Library and the Vice President of the State Archive of Baden-Württemberg. These three are the decision-making board meeting once in a month. Then we have a coordinator, which is the German National Library, who is coordinating all the ideas of the 13 institutions. We have an office which is placed at the Foundation for Russian Cultural Heritage as well. Fraunhofer IAS, which is a big research institute in Germany, has been given the task to develop the service, and they are in close relationship with the network in developing it. We have several working groups with members of the network working together with Fraunhofer in order to support the development. And we are still searching a proper name, because at the moment we still talk about the German Digital Library, Deutsche Digitale Bibliothek, which especially in the German language is associated only with libraries. And this makes it a little bit complicated to include also museums and archives and the other institutions, the science institutions. We are expecting to do so. We expect the first version of the German Digital Library to go online next year. And this was what I told you already. We have, for the organization issue, we have a board, we have an office, and we have the coordinator of the distributed activities, which is the German National Library. What is the main objective of the service? Okay, we want to provide easier access to digital content from scientific and cultural heritage institutions. One of the tasks will be to be the main national aggregator, maybe not the only one, but the main national aggregator for Europeana from Germany. The service will support the institutions who want to contribute content, and it will be a communication and information platform also for the institutions themselves. And it will provide a cooperative workspace for the whole group. So who will participate? It's archives, libraries, museums, media archives, monument protection, and scientific institutions. And the media will be similar as they are in Europeana. So as Jill already said, in a way the German Digital Library is on a national level aiming at what Europeana already achieved on European level. And the target audiences are education and research, schools, media, and the general public. So it's the same figures you saw already in Jill's presentation. What are the questions were, what are the main challenges to achieve our vision? And one challenge really is to get enough institutions involved. Then one challenge is to offer content easy to use for the different target groups, keeps the support from the politics, and offer enough content. Be able to demonstrate the usefulness of the service and be able to offer a reliable and innovative service on a permanent basis. So these are the main challenges we see, and there are, of course, a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Okay, so we've heard from the German Digital Library Initiative, yet in the making, in trusted hands. There's a professor, doctor leading the thing, so that can't go wrong. We will now hear from another national initiative, Cultur Italia, and Sara Di Giorgio.
Yes.
Will be talking us through what they did. This is a long-standing initiative who has quite a bit of experience on the ground with how this works.
Okay. I'm working in the Central Institute of the Union Catalog of Italian Libraries. That is coordinate the major project on digitization in cultural heritage, like, for example, Internet Culturale, Cultura Italia, but also European project and Google Books, in particular Italian, and many regional projects of digitization. Cultura Italia is online from 2008 and aggregate metadata which gathers and organizes information arriving from many content providers, both public and private, like archives, museums, galleries, and so on, but also shows another type of content that are editorial articles. These are very useful because they put a light on the big index of metadata that Cultura Italia has, and also give the opportunity to present the content provider in the portal. We have service to the user, like a community on Facebook and newsletter, and so on. These are some data about Cultura Italia. We have more than 10 million of aggregator metadata, 35 partners, including aggregator. We have a community that is growing in Facebook, 20,000 articles and news, but also we offer and we give support to the content provider, giving them the possibility to download open source software, and we gave them technical support to realize interoperability between the database and the portal. We have already sent to Europeana 1,622,000 metadata. So the main goal is to promote, of course, the various aspects of the Italian culture, like heritage, landscape, science, cinema, music, and so on, and to give to the end user an integrated point of access to the Italian cultural heritage, but also to increase the digitization of cultural contents and to contribute to the building process of Europeana by a national and cross-domain aggregator. So this is an example of metadata published in Cultura Italia and Europeana. It's a painting of Michelangelo in the Uffizi Museum. The users, Cultura Italia is targeted to a general user, both Italian and foreign, such as tourists, students, and experts that working for cultural institutions. The portal offers to the end users different services, like I told you, editorial articles and bookmarks, Facebook community, and press room. In July 2010, Cultura Italia promoted a survey about culture and web to identify the strengths, but also the weakness of the system of communication, use, and dissemination of cultural content in the web. 4,000 users participated, answered to 31 questions on how they use the cultural web. The result shows clearly that the user appears to be ready to follow technological innovation. Particularly, I want to show you the result on a question about the main reason of consultation of cultural web by the users. One of the objectives of browsing is to be informed on events and news, to find elements for studying or research, and for tourist information. Another answer gave us indication about the use of some free culture online services. Wikipedia, online newspaper, and dictionary are the most appreciated services. Cultura Italia and Europeana, unfortunately, are not still well known. Now we are restyling Cultura Italia to develop new services like digital magazine, the integration of content by DBpedia, and the integration of API of Europeana, and also we are building a platform for user-generated content and the version for mobile. We are working for geographical access of the resources, to a platform to publish linked open data, and we integrate in the portal a digital library for the museum. These are the platform under development. Actually, the content providers adhered by Cultura Italia, signing an agreement which established the content to be made available to Cultura Italia. The agreement provided a licensed Creative Commons, attribution non-commercial, which excludes any use of metadata for commercial purpose. It's currently studying a license to distribute under the terms of Creative Commons metadata CC0 for the publication of linked open data. The goal is to align Cultura Italia to the strategy of Europeana. There is a plan to renegotiate all the existing agreements with the new conditions. It takes time to have a response because linked open data is a standard that is not so diffused in Italy in the field of cultural heritage. And the commercial use and loss of control of data are difficult conditions to accept for some of our content providers. There are different administrative institutions, some are private and some are aggregators, so we have to repeat the chain to sign the according. But also, I want to speak about best practice network because it's a successful strategy to grow together and to share service with users and stakeholders. Here are some good examples that we experiment, like Athena project that gave more than 4 million data to Europeana for museums of 20 different countries and produced a software called Mint, an ingester made by the Greek part and from the Athena University and used in other European projects like Mimo, Giugaica, and now also by the Digital Public Library of America. Also, the Lido metadata, it's a schema for harvesting format for museum that was very, very useful for many European organizations. Another example is Linked Heritage. It's a project that will bring more than 3 million of metadata for 22 countries in Europe. Last but not least, I want to illustrate an initiative on Cultura Italia within Giudaica Europeana project named the Star of David and the Italian flag to give a space to the history and tradition of the Jewish community during the 150 years since the proclamation of United Italy. The cultural institutions and private citizens are invited to send to Cultura Italia materials like stories, text, images, letters, postcards, and so on. And here there is a page of Cultura Italia with the first results. This is an example of an image and an example of, for example, videos and MP3 files. The initiative was also promoted in blog, printed newspaper, on Facebook, and in 2 conferences in Siena and Modena. And the results were very, very interesting because at the conference participated many experts and people from Jewish community. So this initiative had shown a great interest in Europeana Giudaica, and people asked that the initiative continues after the end of the project. The community is growing because there is a simple mechanism. If you are there, I want to be there too. At the beginning, we had some difficulties to reach the Jewish community, so we involved in the initiative many experts and historical about Jewish history. So it was a very good initiative of dissemination of Cultura Italia and Europeana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this. We've now got a bit of a perspective on how national initiatives look at the world and the commons. Sorry, Louise, you can't stand. Louise will tell us a bit about the perspective of vertical portals, so they're called, quote unquote, and the perspective of the libraries, the European Library.
So good morning, everybody. My name's Louise Edwards. I work for the European Library. We also lead a project called Europeana Libraries. My talk will focus very much on the demand side that Jill was talking about. So I will leave showing you the portal until the very end. I understand that in marketing, it's about 80% you, them, and 20% us. And that's what I'm going to try and adhere to. I also want to try and address the cultural commons agenda. My knowledge is limited to what I managed to read on the aeroplane yesterday between Amsterdam and Warsaw, but this is also something that I will try and address. Several things struck me about the cultural commons idea. One is that it's been around for a long time. And the second one is, what's the big idea? And to try and get to that, I went back to my roots as an academic librarian, because the cultural commons idea says start with a community. So let's start with an academic community. I started my career at the University of Birmingham, which you can see on the left-hand side. If you want a job where you can do a lot of clock watching, then the University of Birmingham is a good place to work, because you see it's dominated by a very large, tall clock tower. But also, that building on the right is the library, and that looks out on the clock tower. So the library is really at the heart of this community, this academic community, made up of people, you can see them there, coming together to share ideas and create new knowledge. Another place I worked at was Cranfield University. It's difficult to see this, but this is a Norman Foster designed library, which is telling us that these library buildings and their resources are icons. They sit at the heart of their communities. So another idea from the cultural commons is of a shared pooled resource. Well, an academic library is a shared pool resource. You can see here the book stacks. You can wander around those book stacks. You can share the books. You can borrow the books. That is sitting at the heart of that academic community. It is the lifeblood of that community. What's the big idea? What makes the difference? Well, I think it's this. I think it's the role of technology, which means that we can move not only to knowledge production in local institutions, but that this sharing of knowledge and production of knowledge moves to a global stage. And we have the start of these things called virtual research environments. This is where groups of researchers could be located anywhere around the world, different universities, so you've got partner A, B, C, D, working with other universities, working with companies to create new knowledge. But the important thing is that those teams are very much distributed. Now, there is a research agenda starting to take shape in Europe. So if you look at the Humanities European Research Area, is that correct? Yes, HERA. You find that they are putting together a joint research program of the research councils across Europe, looking at the big issues that affect Europe. And they are funding projects of distributed pan-European research teams working on these big issues. Now, these are quite difficult to read, but they are led by a whole variety of different universities. You look at the second one down, is being led by my old University of Birmingham. And it's looking at discourses of inheritance and identity in 4 multilingual European settings. Now, if you look at that topic and you look at the distribution of those research teams working on that project, could any one library support that endeavour? I think the answer is no. No university library could do it. No national library could do it. What it needs is a European library. There's also the growth of research infrastructures that support these distributed research teams. So ESFRI is a roadmap that's creating a platform to bring together the content, tools, and services to support the European research agenda. And 2 examples. The first one is DARIA, digital research infrastructure for the arts and humanities. and the second one is Clarin. I have to get close to read this. Common language resources and technology infrastructure. Now, what it means is that with both of these infrastructures, we as libraries need to get our content, our data, into these infrastructures. So, I come to this project called Europeana Libraries. This started this year. It's a 2-year project being funded by the European Commission. It's bringing together Europe's research and national libraries. This is a big endeavor. We hope to scale up to around 400 research libraries. We're trying to build an infrastructure for aggregation of that content. And we want to start to work together on services for researchers, such as the mining of textual information or the mining of metadata. So our aim is to bring our data into these growing European research infrastructures. One tangible output from this is a new portal. It looks like this. It's not very clear on this screen, but there will be a private alpha launch of this in October. It is working in new ways. It's bringing in aggregated research content, so it's bringing in content such as Driver, the open access repositories, as well as the content from academic libraries. It's working in new ways with subject classification. It's trying to move away from traditional library classification schema into mapping our data against academic research disciplines. And it's trying to mine our metadata in new and different ways to map things like place of publication, date of publication, etc., which is all very interesting for researchers. So, in conclusion, what can we say? We as libraries, national and research libraries, are working together to support Europe's research communities with our content and working together to produce tools and services to use with that content. We want to embed our content within Europe's e-research infrastructures. I've shown you 2, Daria and Clarin. We want to deepen our understanding of European researcher needs and behaviours. Can we say that there are European research practices? I don't know. Is it nationally determined? We certainly know it will be determined by discipline or by field. We think we need a content strategy, and one of the emphases of this content strategy will be very much open access repositories of scholarly material. And leading from this, we want to work with other domains. So if you're an archive or film or TV, etc., we'd like to work with you to start to open this up to create services for researchers. And Jill mentioned the idea of a Europeana research. That's the way we'd like to go. We'd like to work with the other domains. So if you're interested, we would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. That was an invitation to all of us. This was the side from the libraries, and you already see that we're looking for connections. So I'd like to invite Peter Endren, to give us the perspectives of the archivist on this.
Good day. I am a senior project officer at the National Archives of Sweden. And I've been working with a lot of different projects in a user perspective. And when we come back to this project, the ApeNet project, the name, we are sort of back again to the beginning, what we did 15 years ago, trying to build up portals for actually doing the basic work of putting our stuff out on the internet. We're doing this now in a European context. What we're doing is to create Archives Portal Europe, which is actually on the internet now. We publish the aligned metadata of the European Archival Institution on the portal. And that's not so easy. We publish metadata links to our digital content on the Europeana portal. And we do offer our users value by providing a non-stop shop for European archival content with full provenance and context. And we also try to provide a knowledge-building environment based on the expert participation and user-generated content through Web 2 solution, social softwares and community tools. And I have to say that so far we've only been sniffing on this. We need to develop this much more further, because for the archival users, this is the greatest hope we can consider. So I'll be back on that. Who are the users of archival content? Well, our users are not just browsing through, looking for media consumption. As soon as they encounter archival content, they become researchers. Even if they only want to know the name of their great-grandmother or the previous owner of their house, they are entering a process of creating a story, a history. Our experienced users know that the archives can provide them with the stories that are not yet told. And our users are our greatest assets and also our greatest challenge when providing new services. We will try very much to use the new technologies to do this. So, the challenges. Archival content is traditionally for keeps, not for display. This is something that we have to work with. And I mean, seen in the time perspective, this is, of course, something that won't be done in 1 or 2 years. It has to be done, a lot of work in this. Also, archival content is generally not curated. And I would say personally that maybe it shouldn't. The stories that are created by the users. So if it should be curated, it should be curated by the users. There is a need to align standards used in different domains. I think about CDOC CRM to EAD, EAC, CPF. And also an elaborate data model is essential also for the success of Europeana, I think. We need to do this. Accepting the Europeana Data Exchange Agreement is another challenge, actually. It's also a challenge for some of the European national archives. And this is because our partners are subject to legislation. Some of our partners are actually the ministries that are issuing the legislation. And therefore, there is a process to come to terms with this. But I think we're on the way. It's a huge super tanker that has been put on the move, and that is a lot because of Europeana and the Europeana initiative, that the engine has started working. So I have good hopes. APENET goes Apex. That is our next project that we are negotiating. It's not ready yet, but we have good hopes for our negotiations on this project. And I would like to sort of add up with this. The APENET project consortium was 7 national archives and Europeana. In the Apex project, we are 29 European national archives that will cooperate with Icarus network, which in itself contains about 100 institutions themselves. And we are completely covered, the European Union, except for one. There is one exception, and that is the National Archives of the UK. So if there is anybody representing the National Archives of the UK here, I would like to have a serious chat afterwards. APENET, Apex Consortium, will provide a formidable amount of content to the Archives Portal Europe and to Europeana. The digital content at the European National Archives currently makes up about 3–4% of the total content in the partner institution, and when 100% is digitized, Europeana will mainly be an archives portal, but that is about 50 years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this enlightening talk. It's interesting to see how archives, the traditionally most safeguarding of institutions, are so into bringing everything into the open. Thank you. We'll talk all about open. We'll talk with Alex Tarkowski from Creative Commons Poland. I think you all know Creative Commons, but I would be very interested to hear his perspective on the things we're talking about now.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Alex Tarkowski. I'm public lead of Creative Commons Poland. And just by looking at the very title of the conference and the similarity of the names, you can imagine I feel very much at home here, and this has been confirmed by the earlier talks, which may sort of confirm my suspicions that a lot of the things I want to talk about will already be said earlier and might be obvious to a lot of you. So I decided especially that there's little time to skip the details about how our licenses work or show you data showing that more and more people use it, and wanted to talk more about our perspective on the commons, because also I must admit we are not a content provider. We are a facilitator for content providers. We understand our mission is to develop, support, and steward infrastructure that increases digital creativity, sharing, and innovation. We could say that helps build the commons. And from this perspective, I think we can think of ourselves as not a content provider, but a rules provider, which functions in an unusual situation because we have no really means of enforcing these rules. We have only means of convincing others to use those rules or to enforce them. So, having said that, I wanted to talk about two areas. One is public institutions, and the other is grassroots or the public. This might not be clear. It's not the innards of a computer. It's a public library. You sometimes get into problems trying to get good photos of abstract concepts. Michael did a really good job earlier. But it's a public library in Madrid. And from this perspective, what I think is very important, and this has already been mentioned before, but I want to stress this, that while with regard to commercial enterprises or private individuals, the decision to use open licensing is a sort of a, we think, a smart decision, but it's one of the options that should be made on their own will. We believe that with regard to public institutions, there are very good reasons to think that this is a certain public obligation, to believe that what is publicly funded or publicly created should be made publicly available for access and reuse. I think the perspective that the European Commission is taking in thinking about so-called PSI plus thinking, where you try to add to the regime for open information a regime for open content, is very important. And this is a route we've been following in Poland. By we, I don't mean Creative Commons, but we as a country, the Polish government has just adopted a quite liberal PSI legislation, which includes an open regime without charges for reuse and with an obligation, for example, to openly license information that has a status as a copyrightable work. But in addition to that, we are working on a new legislation that that will try to introduce a similar regime for educational, cultural, and scientific content, so the part that currently is, for instance, out of the scope of the PSI directive, and this is an approach that we think, for instance, is very well developed in New Zealand with their NZGO standard. Moving on to the other side, the grassroots, this has been very well described already today, that people today have the capacity to create their own content and even their own quasi-institutions for such content. So I think what's important here that when we speak about a user perspective. It's not just a perspective of demand, but also of user supply. So take any big social networking site with content like Flickr, YouTube, Vimeo, or Blip TV, and you'll probably find, I don't know the numbers, I would imagine at least a third of it is user-generated content. And now try to imagine Europeana is also cataloging that content. And now that's a sort of scary thought, how that would work with all the kitten videos being cataloged and looking for good ways and sensible ways to work with that. But to be honest, that's becoming part of our cultural commons as well, and we have to deal somehow with that. And the other thing I wanted to add is that it's only a theory that users are doing this themselves. They're usually doing it with the help of some kind of a commercial intermediary, often in the shape of a commercially owned online platform. The ones I mentioned are all commercial platforms. So there's a very big role they have to play here in supporting this commons. And it's these type of activities like Flickr allowing CC license use is a very important step. But the platforms and the public institutions won't do all of the work. And it's a work not of only creating content, but making it available. And I think this is one of the key challenges. We have in Poland a small project called Otwórz Książkę, Open the Book, run by Creative Commons Poland, where we convince scientists to make whole books they have written previously available online. And we're targeting scientists and not, for instance, the publishers for two reasons. One is actually it's easier to talk with them and to convince them. But secondly, it's an issue of engagement. The rule is not being sort of forced upon them, but it's being explained to them and they're making their own decision. Just to sum up, the last part is mutual engagement between these two spheres. I really like the metaphor used by Paul Keller from Kennisland in the Netherlands, who says that cultural institutions are like castles and they want pilgrims to come and visit their beautiful vaults full of treasures, but pilgrims, you don't see it very well, are going on a path that doesn't lead to the castle but goes somewhere else, maybe to some marketplace nearby. And Paul is saying people have now castles in their own gardens, and the real castles, the traditional public institutions, need to open up. But we can also face the situations where they will be open, they will be using open licensing, they will be like Europeana, using open licensing for metadata, but people will still not be visiting these sites. And I think we'll get to a point where we can think there will be some form of digital exclusion with regard to understanding of openness. And the only solution I can see here is that the open tools, the platforms that do embrace openness, the platforms that were shown earlier, showing the 12 elements of commons being in practice used, have to be introduced into the schooling system. We can't just assume that it runs in the bloodstream of the new digital generation to use these things, but and it won't happen on their own. I don't think they will reach these portals on their own, and I think the best place to start is to start at school and use places like Europeana, Flickr, Wikipedia, just as we use the math and language textbooks. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that metaphor. It's a complex world, and metaphor seems to be the only way to help us grasp things. We have a final speaker, Agata Václavic Weiman. I did try to do the middle name. Thank you. Who's going to give us a different perspective, one from the private sector, from Google Poland in this case.
Thank you very much. I have probably some surprise for you. These are not going to be very different views from what you have heard so far. So let me speak from the perspective of a private sector company, but a very special private sector company on supporting culture online. So first, we just mentioned metaphors are necessary, and I think what is important to note is that the internet has changed the way people discover information. It has changed the way they access it and the ways they share it. And of course, it also destabilized the habits of our use and access of culture. So today, at the time when we finally begin to master this new soil, we can make the most of it together. And I think this is more or less where the European Cultural Commons idea begins. There is a vision that I think all public institutions that were represented on this panel, as well as an institution like a company like Google share. And this is something that actually stems from the 19th century. There were two lawyers, Henri Lafontaine and Paul Otlet, who in 1895 determined a vision that now drives the internet, search engines, institutions like Europeana and all other national and international initiatives on organizing information. So Paul Otlet in Belgium created a system of archiving the world's information, and also thought that at some point it would be possible for people from their homes to access this information. Back then, he thought about some electric telescopes. Now we know this is the internet that helps us to actually realize the mission and the vision that Paul Otlet had in mind. So maybe before I get to this issue, one thing that we need to remember about is discoverability of content online. I think this is a main challenge and also opportunity for all the institutions that are organizing and collecting information online. With the growth of content online and the variety of different uses of the internet that the users have, the discoverability of content becomes one of the main challenges. So just to get some data, today we have 5 exabytes of data created every day on the internet. As Alec mentioned before, this is a joint effort, not only by institutions, but probably mainly dominated by internet users. So there's a great diversity of data available there. Maybe just to compare, in 2002 we had only 5 exabytes of data available in general online. So that's a major change now. We have around 325 billion websites available right now. In 1994, it was just 623 websites altogether. So that's a major change and a major symptom, I think, of the times we live in. But as you see on this slide, the web is not yet a mirror of the world's cultural riches. Almost 50% of content available online is content in English. Content in Italian, German, French, it's between 6 and 8% of available content. So there's a lot to be done. Not to mention the statistics for some African countries, for example, where this is really, really very scarce content. So this imbalance, I think, is one of the main challenges that the world is facing, and this is something that the public institutions are dealing with, and also that companies like Google try to support in as much as it is possible. So one of the ideas for supporting creation of local content in places where there is not sufficient content available are initiatives that we as Google have supported across Africa. So you see 3 examples of such initiatives: Baraza, Tanda, and Swahili Wikipedia Challenge. Where each of those initiatives was a local initiative where local users were pulling together to create online resources and online content. And each of those initiatives resulted in thousands of entries and units of content in Kenya, Tanzania, and other countries in Africa. So that's one way that Google supports creation of content. The other tool that actually you may be familiar with is Google Translate, which addresses one of the main barriers with access to content. globally. So with Google Translate, it is possible to, through the use of a pretty simple online tool, which is available for free, to translate the content that is available to other languages. And I think for languages which are spoken in one country only, that's one of the nicer tools available out there. The other way, we, apart from supporting grassroots initiatives and helping to actually overcome the language barrier for cultural content, Google is increasingly partnering and collaborating on digitization of world's cultural content. As I think we in Europe are very much aware, this is a mammoth task to digitize the content only if we speak about Europe. Some studies assess the costs involved in the digitization of European cultural heritage to 100 billion euros. So that's a major task, and this is something that especially Europeana is tackling as the main challenge. But Google is also helping to support those initiatives in as much as we can. So one type of initiatives that I think most of the audience is very well familiar with are the partnerships with libraries that we have worldwide. So we have right now 43 library partnerships worldwide. Within those partnerships, we have been able to digitize over 15 million books worldwide. What is connected with the digitization of books are certain opportunities which we already also heard about in analyzing the data that comes from the books that were digitized. And this is something that we at Google like to support. And for example, in digital humanities, we have set up a system of grants where we try to support the research institutions that actually enter into the field on their projects on digital humanities. There is also a tool which is called Google Books Ngram Viewer, probably also something that the audience here is familiar with, where you can compare the statistics for different terms and analyze the trends over time for different terms which appear in digitized books. This can help studies from analysis of how certain ideas were spreading throughout the centuries, through analysis of freedom of expression and its limitation in different regions and different times. From books, let me take you for a second to archive partnerships. I think that's a major opportunity that we are seeing generally for the use of the internet in making cultural content available. We have heard from ApeNet. These are some examples of the recent projects that Google was involved in. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Yad Vashem digitization of photography project. We also gave a grant and support technologically the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Desmond Tutu Foundations on archiving of the documentation and journals of diaries of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. In each of these projects, I think it's interesting to mention that besides digitizing, what Google is actually collaborating with those institutions on is how to make this content actually interesting and useful for the internet audience. So, for example, in Dead Sea Scrolls, if you go to the Dead Sea Scrolls website, you will see that you can take a look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. You can, of course, zoom in, so see clearly how the scrolls look. But also, you can actually get it easily translated to a more understandable language. For example, English. With Yad Vashem, with the photographs, there's an ongoing collaboration to actually tell the stories that the photographs are connected to. Through using of online tools, and so on. Another aspect of Google's activity is partnering with museums. So again, coming back to the Neum vision, let's think about strolling through your favorite museum while you're sitting at home. It started with a single project which was focused on Museum Prado. For Museum Prado, for collaboration with Museum Prado, we used the Google Earth technology to create high-resolution pictures that are available now online. Then, throughout the last year, it turned into a major project which actually by now combines already 17 acclaimed museums in 9 countries around the world. It includes over 1,000 paintings in high resolution. And again, what is interesting about this project is that it tries to engage the internet user as much as it is possible. So besides the virtual walk in the museum and the possibility to zoom in into selected pictures which were taken in high resolution, you actually have access to other content which is related to the different works of art. So let's imagine a YouTube video related to an artist, some additional information on the artist or the piece of work. You also, as a user, you are able to create your own collection, which you can share with your friends, and that actually makes the whole project quite interactive. Just very briefly to finish, let me just guide you through some other initiatives which could be interesting just to take a note of. Besides using the Google Earth Street View technology for the art project and browsing through the museums, we are partnering with different institutions like UNESCO on using the Street View technology to actually make available imagery of the most important World Heritage sites online. Street View is also used for actually collecting pictures from different times of different places. So it actually helps you to see on a timeline how a selected place looked like. So that's History Pin project, for example, where Google. This is not a Google project, but we are cooperating with History Pin on this. There are, of course, Street View tours of selected monuments. So this is the famous Italian example, of course, of the Colosseum. Another Italian example of doing good with technology is the L'Aquila project. L'Aquila city suffered from the earthquake in 2009. And we were able to partner together with Italian institutions to do a series of 3 modeling workshops that helped, and I think are still helping to rebuild the city to the state it was before the earthquake. So that's another use of technology. And to finish, besides all the mapping stuff that I've showed you, another way to look at the use of technologies for creating the commons and increasing the collaboration of institutions with the users of the internet could be something like YouTube or any other video platform. So for YouTube, we were able to partner with some major cultural institutions as well as movie directors to engage the internet users in art creation. So Life in a Day was a film that is 100% made of the content created by the internet users and submitted in the video contest on YouTube. It was presented and quite warmly received on the last Sundance Festival. The YouTube Play was a project done together with Guggenheim, where it was basically a celebration of a video created online. There was a contest for the best video of biggest artistic value done together with Guggenheim. 25 videos were selected as finalists. And then another quite interesting project, I could say, is especially for me, because I love classical music, is the YouTube Symphony. That's something that we are doing each year with a different philharmonic. So we had a cooperation with Carnegie Hall last year. This year it was Sydney Opera. It's a contest for YouTube users who are aspiring musicians to record their video on different instruments, and there is a contest that takes them in the final stages to become a member of an actual symphonic orchestra, which then performs last year in Carnegie Hall, this year in Sydney, an actual piece of symphonic music. So the last thing is the Google's Cultural Institute, a little bit of institutionalization of our efforts across Europe. This year we are opening Google's Cultural Institute focused especially on European technology initiatives for culture within Europe. So I think that's going to be also a very interesting development, and I look forward to telling you more about this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agatha, for that last introduction. We are very curious about the cultural institutes ourselves. We need 1 minute to get organized here, so take a deep breath. Exhale again. Let Jill sit down. And we'll continue with the panel discussion.